Today's topic is a hot one. It's the great gun debate, and it's been on the front of everyone's feeds for the last few days. We're watching big companies come out, government make law changes, and all kinds of things are happening. The real debate at the core is about guns. Are they tools of terror or tools of self-defense? Now, you're going to be the judge in this one, but I'm going to first lay out all the facts for you. So strap those earbuds in tight, because here we go. Hey guys, it's Joe here, and we're here with the Practical Prepper Podcast, and today we're going to talk about guns. You knew it was coming. You've been reading the news. We had to talk about it. We here at the Practical Prepper and at the National Self-Reliance Initiative really like to focus on the side of preparedness, right? How are we preparing ourselves to be self-reliant from any other sources? And that includes even law enforcement at times. There's an old adage that says, if you need a cop to be there right now, just wait 5 minutes. And it holds true. And I've known a lot of officers that have kind of seconded that and say, we will be there as soon as possible. But that never, they can't be everywhere at all times. It's just not possible. So that's where we're going to take it today. We're going to take a look at guns. Are they tools of defense or tools of terror? And the best way that I can take you down this path and lead this conversation is going to be to take you through the facts. I like to stay in the center. I like to stay unbiased if I can, but I will share my bias at the end, and we'll get to that. But before we do, let's just give a quick shout out here to our sponsor. So our sponsor today is Steel River Company, and I always think of Steel River knives because it's the knives that I carry with me every day. But the Steel River Company is a great company. They carry everything from lighting to range gear. I've got a great pair of their eyes that I take to the range with me, that are interchangeable depending on the time of day and sun and whatnot. And they feel super light in the face, which is why I enjoy that stuff as well too. But check out their website, and I'm going to give you a code right here, and this is a whopper. It's 30% off anything in their store. You can use it here through the end of the month, and it is good, one per customer, but you can use it on as much as you put in your cart. You'll get 30% off the total. So check it out. Punch the code in at the end, NSRI30. It's the benefit that our NSRI members get all the time if you're a member of the NSRI group. Otherwise, this is kind of to the end of the month. You get the perk too, just for listening to our podcast, and just a way of extending that benefit out. And just thanks to Steel River Company for extending that out for you today. So let's go ahead and get into it. I think it's best to kind of start with, for the top, is let's talk about the facts, right? We know that we feel like, at least, that they're reporting more of these active shooters, what we'll call them, right? They don't all turn out to be mass shootings. I think you need to look at it as a bigger picture. And the reason for that is the mass shootings only take a look at when people didn't step up and stop it from happening. When we look at active shooters, we're really going to look at and include in the numbers incidents in which citizens stepped in to stop it from becoming a mass shooting. And I think that's imperative too, because we have to learn the lesson across the board, not just on the ones that end up with horrific endings. So we're going to take a focus today on some numbers. And I really went to the FBI. They do a lot of reporting on this, and it is mid-year right now, so it felt the best to take a look at 2018 as a full picture. And the numbers for 2019, I'm sure we'll catch in the spring. But for right now, let's just take a look at a few numbers of things. So the first one is, how many active shooting incidents were there in 2018? And that number is 27. That's the number I'm going to keep in my head here, is saying, all right, there's 27, a little bit over 2 a month that are happening in the United States, according to the FBI. Now, all that being said, there are already 38 this year, and that's just through the end of August. So we know that the numbers are going to be much higher next year, and overall trending, that seems about right. Now we need to figure out the correlation to something, and then we need to identify if there's causation, and that's how we're going to be able to figure out real change and how we affect this and how we save lives. So when we think about there's 27 incidents that happened in 2018, And all these numbers as well too are up on my blog post for this show. All the show notes are there along with the codes and everything. So if you're following around, don't feel like you got to grab a pad of paper. It's all there. You can just look it up. Hopefully that's easier for you. But if I'm looking at 27 incidents that happened in 16 states, there were 85 people that lost their lives related to these sort of incidents last year, and 128 of them were wounded. Now, it scales to be a lot male, so 23 of the 27 shooters were male, 3 of them were female, and one, honestly, they haven't caught yet, and I think that was a sniper situation. Nobody died, but they did shoot up like 4 cars on the side of a highway. But that one's still at large. So that one's going to skew the data a little bit. We don't know where to throw the numbers in that column. But overall, that's pretty minuscule if you think about the 27 shooters, 23 male, 3 female. Now, what I will say is there were 10 of those shooters. We're not going to name any of the shooters. I just don't like to give them any respect in that way. What they do is small and cowardice, and I don't want to name their names because that's probably part of the reason they wanted to do it. So we're going to avoid that today. Instead, as we kind of run through the numbers on how they exited, 10 of them took the cowardice exit, and that's they committed suicide while they were in there. 11 of them were taken in by the good guys. These are the ones that did not die, whether there was 4 that were suicide by cop, but 11 of them were taken into custody, 10 committed suicide. So we're actually taking more of them into custody than are committing suicide, which is good, because then we can start to get some intel upon what is the problem here and really start to think about how do we begin to solve the problem. So in addition to the 10 that took the cowardly way out, the 11 that the good guys grabbed, there were 4 that did suicide by cop, meaning they want to start throwing rounds around, and they were outmatched. So 4 of them died by police fire. 1 was killed by an armed citizen. That's an interesting one to me too, because I think we don't hear that story. That story is not a common one that is put around the press, and I will have to lean on the side of the folks that say, hey, the press isn't representing everything equal. As I do my research, I kind of look and you have to dig a little harder to find out the ones where nobody got hurt, because all they want to do is broadcast the ones with the most deaths, and that's not really what we want to do. I think that's part of the problem, is what we're doing is setting up an environment in which someone who wants attention now knows the recipe for attention. The recipe for attention is get something, go cause a major catastrophe, kill some people, and then they'll say my name everywhere. Again, not going to say your name. Of all of the areas that have had, all states that had shootings, California is the most, which would be a shocker because California, man, they got all those gun laws. You can't even have, assault rifle. So that's impressive that it has the most. I think you can take that with a little tongue in cheek here as I say it, but you would think, ideally, you would think the state with the most restrictive laws would have the fewer amount of gun shootings if guns are the problem. So you're hearing a little bit of my bias there, and that's okay. I think that's important to come through. The number of active shooter situations that were stopped by citizens is actually 5. So 5 of the, one shot him dead. The other 4 were able to dissuade them either with their firearms. So they now were match to match, and they decided, I'm out of the fight. I'll just wait for the cops. I'd rather do that than die. Or some of the 3 of the other ones were restrained by citizens until the cops arrived. So those are the type of hero stories that we should probably say more about. Is even if you don't have a firearm, and you guys know my take on it. I would always have a firearm if I can. That's just me. That's how I feel from a self-reliant standpoint. I'm very comfortable with it. I'm well trained on it. I'm accurate, and I have good mental prudence. So I am very comfortable having that firearm with me. If you're not, you still got 3 of these things where unarmed citizens jumped in and saved people. One was a teacher, 2 other were watcher-bys, but nonetheless, you've got people who are willing to jump in and risk everything with their bare knuckles if they need to stop the situation, and it pays off. We got to tell that story. This is the one stat, before we kind of move into the next piece, that I thought was the most interesting to the type of comments we're going to hear coming up in the rest of this podcast, because now we're going to talk about solutions in a minute and how we solve it. And that's 22%. 22% is the percent of the time a rifle was present in the shooting, right? So only 22% of the time was there a rifle there. And so we're going to hear a few things in a minute about how we restrict rifles. Now, yes, if there's a rifle there, will it cause more death than a pistol will? Probably. I can't find a good argument against that to say, all right, yeah, if you have more rounds and they shoot more rapidly, they will. But most of the time, that's not what they're bringing in. Like an overwhelming percentage, like only one out of every, almost 1 out of 5 times is someone going to show up with a rifle. Most of the time, it's going to be a pistol. And that's what's going to really start it off. That's what's going to invoke terror. And we talk about the number of these things that are out there. So we'll look at those numbers, may change next year. I don't know. But for right now, I just wanted to make sure we had some of the facts. So the other piece around these citizen intervention, when we think about it, there's 2 incidents that happened in 2018. And I'm just going to go ahead and read them. In one incident, 2 citizens retrieved their guns from their respective vehicles and then shot and killed the shooter. So again, 2 things to note here. If they weren't allowed to have them in their cars, they would not have been able to shoot and kill the shooter. If they were allowed to have them on themselves where they were, then they would have shot and killed the shooter before he shot any more people. The second incident, a citizen armed with a gun confronted the shooter, but no gunfire was exchanged. He was just keeping his attention. Then a second citizen jumped in, started exchanging gunfire with the shooter, but neither of them were able to hit the other. And the shooter then fled, knowing he was outgunned, and was picked up and apprehended by law enforcement a short time later in a different location. So those are the 2 incidents that in 2018 happened that we can kind of look back at. So I think it's important to understand the importance of the self-reliance point of being self-armed and accurate. We can see this guy was not accurate, which turned out to be a benefit to the shooter in this case. If he had a greater accuracy, he might have taken out the shooter. Now, you can jump in on their side and say, well, that would have been unjust because he didn't need to kill him. We were able to apprehend him anyways. And I can understand that side of the story. But when somebody is holding a gun at you, I feel you have the right to defend your people who are in the room, defend yourself and your life. Your loss of life and others' loss of life are now at stake, and you've got to jump in and you got to try to prevent that. So I think it's prudent to get in there. I just think you need to hit your target as best you can. Now, having not been in that situation before and not having my pulse beat at that level, I can't really talk to whether your training truly kicks in at that point, if you're really working the basics, or if, man, you're just going to start spraying and praying. But my hope would be that you're pretty judicious in your fire. So the next thing I really want to take it down is about locations. Where do these things happen? Because if we're going to solve the problem of reducing the number of these shootings, we've got to understand where we need to really focus our target. And as we look at a lot of the safety rules that are out there, we've really focused on schools and houses of worship. Those tend to be the big ones that we're seeing a lot of around here. And although those are on the list, they're a little smaller than some of the other ones. So the most likely place for a shooting to happen is at work. 16 of the 27 happened at a business location. Some of those were public business locations, meaning like stores. Some of those are private business locations, like people where customers don't go, like the back of a warehouse. But all in all, they were mostly related to current employee shootings, and in some cases, people who had just been fired. But most often, it was related to people who felt that they were being mistreated at work, whether that be because of their skill set, their race, because of some way that they just perceived it. I think a lot of it just comes from mental instability in the workplace. I think that's a big piece of where we're at. And in this particular case, that's more than half of all of the shootings are happening in business locations. So I think it's a big kind of call out to think about. If you own a company of any size, if you're a human resource manager of any size, you start to think about what kind of mental benefits do we offer today, and how do we see the signs of people who are on that cusp and try to engage them down a path that will really help them to not tip the scale in the direction of becoming violent. I think that's the piece that we really want to understand from the business side. So 16 are in businesses, 5 were in educational settings, 2 were in wide open spaces, highways, 2 were in healthcare facilities. 1 was on government property, the naval base, and 1 was in a house of worship. So all of those kind of together, we can see the numbers get a little smaller when we go open space is kind of random. That it happened twice, but that compared to the opportunity of getting shot at work is there. It's a factor of 10. It's not even close. So I think we need to really focus on how do we begin to work with people with mental issues who are about to break in business settings. And if you want to lump educational in there, although 3 times more are business related than are educational, then we can do that as well too. So let's talk about solutions. So there's kind of a few ways to go about this. I am not a big government person. Someone might call that more of an anarchist side, not like a woo, everybody tear stuff down side, but just more about, I think if people treat each other well, we could get along pretty well without a whole lot of other intervention. That being said, I can definitely make a case for business, for government in some cases. So let's weigh in on this so you kind of know where I'm sitting, so you understand my bias. Let's try to be as even keeled as we can here. So some shootings happened. We saw El Paso, we saw Dayton, Odessa. The day after Odessa happened in Texas, this was the guy that went on the shooting rampage driving around, enough said, a gun law passed in Texas, and the gun law changed the way that Texans are allowed to carry firearms. And it's probably not, unless you're from Texas, probably not the way that you think it went. So it actually loosened the constraints even after the wake of El Paso and then coming through with Odessa. They still released this law which allowed you to make it easier to carry firearms. So now you can carry in places of worship. You can go to your church with a firearm. So we saw that some of those were in places of worship. We said there was one shooting last year in a house of worship. Now in that house of worship, you'd be allowed to carry a firearm. Now the house of worship has the ability to say, I don't want you in here with that. And they can put a sticker up and they can stop you from having a concealed carry in there. But that's up to the place of worship now. It's not forced upon the place of worship, which probably is right-sized to be where it should be. It should be in the hands of the congregation to decide what they want in their house of worship, which is now where it sits. So that one, I like it. You can no longer prohibit renters from having firearms. So if someone is a renter and they want to rent sublease from you, you used to be able to not allow them to sublease from you. And now the law says if you want to rent from me, anybody can rent from me, even if they want to have a concealed carry and they want to keep guns in their place. So this one, I don't know how I feel about. There's a part of me that says, hey, free enterprise, if you don't like my rules, get the hell out. So this is one where I almost wonder if there's a little overreach on the side of government telling renters what they should or shouldn't do. I think if you have a room available and you want to rent it out and you want to say one of the rules is no guns, I think that's the same as saying no cigarettes. I know there's a lot of people who will go, well, it's a right, it's not a privilege. I get that. I get it. But if you want people to be able to have free enterprise, then people who are the business should have the ability to do business with whom they want to do business. So it is a little weird for me where they're trying to get in and try to dictate anybody can carry. You can rent. You have to give it to everybody. Let's go to the next one. You can keep concealed carry at school. You used to not be able to bring them on school property. Now they've seen, because of the incidents and where people had to run to their cars and get firearms, having a firearm in a car, you can get to that faster than the police can get to you, and you can actually save kids' lives. So that now is permitted. I think that's a plus. That's an awesome step in the right direction. You have to keep it concealed. No one can know that you have it there. You have to keep it locked up. So I like that. I'm also an advocate of having security folks in the school, but having them be plainclothed. I have a brother who served in Iraq. He's a teacher at a school. Is there a reason why he shouldn't be allowed to carry a firearm concealed, locked up in his classroom that he has access to in case there's an active shooter situation? He's pretty proficient. He's very responsible. He's got his time served in the military. They trained him pretty well too. So all those things together kind of make me think, hey, that's not a terrible idea to have that when that shooter's in there and he or she gets started, to not have them know where to go. They're going to shoot the cops first. They always do. They shoot the security guards, and then they're going to start on a rampage. But if they don't know who the security guards are, it's a whole different ball game for them. And I think you can start to dissuade some people by having plainclothed individuals as your resource officers within a building. That's my take on it. Also, they said, sometimes we have hurricanes and whatnot in Texas. If you are evacuating because of a hurricane or coming back because of any kind of natural disaster, that you will not be prosecuted for any concealed carry violations. That we almost prefer you to get you and your guns out and safe. In the case that looting happens, we don't want a lot of guns ending up in the wrong hands, right? And people need to protect themselves because honestly, when there is a situation like that, the police need to be in very specific spots and cannot guard everybody. They will not be able to respond to all the safety calls that are out there. So carrying a concealed, even if you didn't have a permit at that point in time, there's a little bit of chaos going on, and safety is going to be a primary issue for every family as they move. Disaster shelters that are going to house people are now going to allow people to bring in their concealed carries as well, so that if you needed to choose between I either need to leave my gun or I'm going to get a chance to get a meal and a shower, you don't have to choose between those anymore. Lastly, and this is the most interesting one to me, is if you have a CCW concealed carry weapon permit and you are in a area that prohibits it, but they didn't post the sign well, you came in the wrong door, whatever happened, but you were ignorant to the fact that it is a place that doesn't allow that, they now will ask you to leave, and if you leave, there's no crime. So basically, if you accidentally, I'm doing some air quotes here, walk into a place, wink, wink, and you didn't know it was there, you're going to get asked to leave if they see your concealed carry. And guys, if you're painting yourself in a way that they're going to see your concealed carry, first of all, there's a problem. I'm not advocating you go walk past signs. There are businesses that have signs up because there's certain people they want to do business with, and it may not be you. Don't patronize them. Don't go there. Don't shop. So why would you want to go patronize them if they don't want you to carry your firearm there, right? I'm not saying break the law. What I'm saying is they've bent the law into a pretzel here, where basically all you have to say is, "I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Yes, I'm going to leave." So it really kind of devalues the value of having a sign on your business anyways. Most folks that carry a handgun are extremely respectful people who respect the signs anyways, just on principle, because we're like kind of people like to do the good thing. But nonetheless, I think it bends the rules quite a bit here. It's going to give a lot of leeway to law enforcement to be able to interpret what they see, which may be a good thing if you've got great law enforcement, and it may not if you don't. So now we know which way that the government went. Let's take a look at the way that big business went. So, of course, I'm thinking in my mind, big business is going to say we could make a lot of money selling ammunition. We make millions of dollars a year selling firearms. The last thing we're going to do is start to pull that stuff back. And I was really surprised by the announcement that Walmart made. And really the reason that I did this podcast today is they announced that they're going to discontinue selling ammunition in 223, 5.56, and 22. I don't get 22, but hey, I don't think there's been a lot of mass shootings with 22s. But 223 and 5.56 I definitely get, because those are your standard rounds that you're going to find in military-style rifles. And they are, I'm not going to say they're not used for hunting, but they are less likely to be used for hunting than some of the other calibers that they will continue to sell in like 308 and 30-aught and things like that. But those main ones that they are going to eliminate, 223, 5.56, and 22, they just don't want that to be a caliber that's they see that as blood on their hands. If somebody's going to go shoot up a school and that had their ammunition in it, they don't like that. And for a corporation to have that kind of response, they have to know that there is an uptick for it somewhere else. Like there's got to be a plus, or they wouldn't just do it. Because they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to make more money. So you can't all of a sudden say, I want to stop making money selling all this stuff, unless you know there's a way to make that money back somewhere else. They're legally obligated to their shareholders to do that. So I had to do a little more digging on this too. What I thought was interesting about the Walmart one is that they own 20% of the ammunition sold in America. That's a lot. When you think about 1 in 5 rounds that's being sent downrange, is from Walmart. That's a pretty big share. They want to get down to 6% by the end of next year. And I think that's admirable to do. They're doing it for show because they want to be seen as a benevolent place where people want to shop. They're walking a fine line here because if you've traveled the country like I have, and I drove a truck for a while, I've traveled for business for a lot, but I've seen a lot of the rural landscape of the United States. And these Walmarts, in some cases, came in, became the only store in town, and now serve a very rural community in Indiana, and that's where everybody does their shopping. Well, that is filled with farmers, with hunters, with all kinds of folks that are outdoors folks, and you got to be careful because you can't offend the people if that's their primary source. If there's one other store in town, those people are hard-pressed. They're going to just go to the other store just on principle. So that's why Walmart is going, we're not going to take away your hunting ammunition. We're not taking away your shotgun shells. We're going to take away your 223 and 5.56, and we know you can go down to Bill's tackle shop down the street. You can get it from him instead, and that's going to be fine. And everybody else is going to feel warmer and fuzzier because Walmart doesn't have assault rifle ammunition anymore. It's not going to make a lick of difference. It's merely a marketing scheme. But what I give them credit for is they're going to take a loss. I don't think the government is going to be able to make the change on active shooter situations. I think big business is really where it needs to come from, and that's my capitalist side. If you let the stores have the authority to pick their customers, and I'll talk about that real quick, then things change a little bit, right? If you tell everybody to serve everybody, then you're hard-pressed to let business really come in and let the dollar come in. People are going to start spending their money in places that align with their values. And I think that's the important piece here. So if you think that not having Walmart sell 223 or 5.56 is a bonus, then you can go do business at Walmart, put your money there, and spend more money there, and they'll get the understanding because now they need to be able to recoup all the money they're going to lose in the sale of ammunition. Kroger did this. This happened last year. There was a shooting. The daughter of the deceased sued Kroger for some money, right? They always go for deep pockets because the store didn't stop the guns from coming in. To be honest, the store wasn't allowed to stop the guns from coming in. The person open carried the gun in, and there's nothing. They're going to lose the lawsuit. But nonetheless, Kroger listened and said, all right, from now on, we can ask our customers they not carry inside of our stores openly because it scares people. So all of the weapons now need to be concealed, and that means that you need to have a concealed carry permit. For instance, in Ohio, I don't need a permit to open carry on my hip and walk into a store. That is perfectly legal for every Ohioan that has a handgun to be able to do. I only need a permit if I want to carry a concealed firearm and I want to conceal it. Once I conceal it, that's what I need the permit for, and that's what makes the difference. First of all, open carry is stupid. You are just making yourself a target for anybody who is in an active shooter situation. Much like I said about in a school, being a security officer and being in a security officer uniform, it may make the parents feel better about dropping their kids off there, but you're a target. You're the first one that's going to get shot in that situation. And it's the same thing for anybody who's carrying open. If you ever went in, think about it. If you went in and you're like, I'm going to go shoot this place up, and you saw two people with pistols, who are the first two people you're going to shoot? Take them out of the game, right? Then you have complete control of the situation. I know why you want to open carry. You're trying to bring something on, right? You're trying to invoke an emotion in someone to try to get them hyped up. And you're trying to start a conversation because you want to talk about gun rights. Some of our rights are best kept by keeping them a secret from everyone else and not thrusting them into the light, right? I am a big proponent of concealed carry. I think that's the right way to do it. I think if you open carry, you're doing it because you're just trying to barge in and start something. If you tell me it's completely uncomfortable, I would not carry it unless I could carry it open. I'm going to give you that much, okay? But for the most part, I think most people who I have seen who are open carrying like that are also wearing a t-shirt that's, going with it and 511 pants, and they're dressed up all operator like, trying to get a conversation started with someone who's ticked off about it. When Kroger is like, all right, you can't open carry in my store, you can still carry, it's got to be concealed, that doesn't bug me. It doesn't bug me that Walmart did it, or Starbucks, Target, Wendy's, Dick's, any of those that are going to say, hey, you can't open carry in here. We don't want you to open carry. I guess you can if you quit trying to push the issue though, right? Like, don't do business there. If you disagree with the policy that much, go do business somewhere else. If this decision ends up tanking Walmart and their shareholders lose 4 or 5% because they can't sell ammunition this year, trust me, they're going to change it back. They have an obligation, a legal obligation to do things that are right for the shareholders. So don't shop there. That's all I can tell you. If enough of us do it, then it'll change. It'll change back. There's one more level of this that I probably didn't hit on, and that's there are companies that sell, like Camping World, that sell guns. They're mostly sell RVs. But they also own Gander, which used to be Gander Mountain when I was a kid. I used to go there and buy sleeping bags and stuff. But Camping World owns Gander, and so they're doing this Salesforce implementation. Salesforce is a big software company. They come in and they build a CRM for you to be able to manage all of your potential customers and pipelines and things like that, and it scales all the way to the back end of the company. Big implementation, multi-million-dollar implementation. And during the implementation, at some point, Salesforce said, hey, we want you to change, and we want Camping World to stop selling guns. Just sell campers. And something happened, and it hasn't been really talked about yet, but all of a sudden, the implementation stopped. Salesforce dropped Camping World off of their website as a customer. And I think that one resonates maybe the deepest for me, is you have a multi-million-dollar software company that is accountable for, again, doing business and trying to make money, and they're willing to take the risk that they're going to make more money because of their integrity and not doing business with Camping World than they would make by doing that one deal with Camping World. So I think when businesses are starting to bet the house on what is going to get them the most, and they're starting to bet against open carry, specifically, is the big one they tend to be gunning at here, or against handgun sales, which makes sense. We saw most of the active shooter situations are done by handguns. I mean, it's a huge amount are done by handguns. So it makes sense that if 3 out of every 4 shootings are handgun related, that we start to separate ourselves from handguns a little bit and let some other store take care of that, because we don't want that, and we don't want people coming back. Like when there was the Parkland, Florida shooting, Dick's really quick said, I know they got the gun from us, so we are pulling all the guns out of 10 of our stores as a pilot program. And they did it, and they lost $150 million in that decision. But the year later, right now, their stocks are up 4%. Now, could that just be the market, and they could have been up 6%, but they gave away $150 million? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows what the future was going to hold if they didn't make that choice. But next year, they're going to double down on it. And of their 730 stores, 135 of them are no longer going to carry firearms. But all of those are now going to be, they're all 21 and over purchase only. That's not the law. It's what they made it. And they're going to continue to remove handguns from all their stores. So that'll be interesting. I'm going to follow that one up too to see how it goes. All right, so where does that leave us really today? So if you're out and about and having a conversation around active shooters, which has been the hype lately, and the topic of guns, tools of defense or tools of terror comes up, you could begin to look at both sides of it. And for guys like me, sometimes I take the other side just because I want to have a good conversation with someone, and I'll kind of feel them out and kind of hop on the other side of the fence. And when I do that, it helps me figure out my side a little bit better too. But when you're having those conversations, have them about facts. Be prepared with the facts. They're going to help you make your point, and understand that assault rifles kill a lot of people. Are they the main concern for active shooter situations? Statistically not last year. I think we can go with that. How do we begin to make change? I think vote with your dollars. Businesses will see what you believe in. If you believe that Dick's made a great choice, buy more soccer shoes at Dick's. If you believe they didn't, don't go back there again. The government has their hands so deep in business pockets anyways, right? The lobbyists are really what are moving laws. Change business, you'll change the lobby, you'll change the laws. But aim with your dollars, make a difference that way. vote with your feet, walk to the other store, show them that it has hurt you enough. That's my advice to you, and I hope that you take that and you move forward. I hope this is good information for you. If it is, please check us out and subscribe to this podcast if you haven't. I really would love it if you guys would do that. I love talking to you guys and love getting your feedback as well, too. And the way to do that is by going on Facebook and going to NSRI USA, and that's our private group there. Just ask to get in. We'll get you in there, and hopefully we get a chance to have a deeper conversation. We had some great folks join last week from the podcast, and looking forward to next week as well. So enjoy and take care out there.